This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. A series of seemingly random assaults over a matter of hours has Winnipeg police on the hunt for two suspects. Officers say multiple people were hit with bear spray in the same general area on Sunday. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, that has people calling now for stricter rules on where others can buy bear spray.
As students walked into University of Winnipeg Tuesday during reading week, they had something more than schoolwork on their mind. Sanchez Saintis is being extra cautious after a series of assaults Sunday in the West End and downtown in a matter of hours involving bear spray and an edged weapon.
I have other priorities. Safety should not be one of my main concerns.
Investigators are still looking for two male suspects. Police Chief Danny Smythe says officers didn't put out a public alert because it wasn't clear until later in the day the incidents may be related.
We had a lot of resources in that area. At one point we had spotted the suspects and we're actually involved in trying to do an apprehension. They went to ground, basically, so it wasn't like we were dealing with an active shooter.
Just before 10 in the morning, a 30-year-old man was attacked by two male suspects with bear spray at Portage and Sherbrooke. Minutes later on Langside, a 24-year-old victim who the University of Winnipeg has said lives at the student residence McPheeters Hall was assaulted with bear spray and was treated for an upper body injury. A 33-year-old man was bear sprayed at St. Mary Avenue and Colony Square at 12:45. Police say witnesses also observed two people being chased by two suspects with weapons at Broadway and Furby around 7:30 in the morning, and CBC spoke to a man who says he was bear sprayed around noon.
He really hits close to home when it's just down the block from you.
Bear Clan coordinator Angela Clausen says the community group canceled their Sunday afternoon patrol in West Broadway. They didn't want to interfere with the investigation and feared it wasn't safe. She's concerned bear spray is too easy for people to get.
I really think they should take a look at changing the laws and how it's sold.
Business owner Rick Sean is licensed to sell the product at his outdoor shop Wilderness Supply, but only after asking customers on how they plan to use it and seeing their ID. Sean suspects the people who are using it unlawfully are often buying it online.
There's not a ton of places selling it online, but there's enough that allows that free flow of bear spray into Manitoba, and unfortunately it's being used for purposes it's not intended for.
Provincial rules don't require buyers show ID to retailers, and there's no age restriction on who can buy it. But Manitoba's Justice Minister Kelvin Gertsen wants more information from provincial officials on how people are getting it before making any changes to how bear spray is sold in stores here.
If it's being, sourced online, and you can buy almost anything online these days, that's a different sort of thing, and that would require a different sort of intervention to prevent that from getting in the hands of people who are using it as a weapon.
Police don't have a motive for these assaults. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The province of Manitoba is looking to beef up its prosecution services. Justice Minister Kelvin Gertsen, who you just saw, says spending an additional $1.4 million each year will add another 10 prosecutors to help deal with the issue of violent crime. He says the additional staff will focus on serious crimes involving weapons, gangs, and gun trafficking. Gertsen says he understands the department is overworked and needs more people.
To ensure that there are the resources and the individuals to follow up on the good work that our police are doing in bringing people to the law, and then our prosecutions goes from there to ensure that justice is served.
Gertsen acknowledges there are staffing shortages everywhere, but he believes with increased capacity, more suspects can be prosecuted and the workload can be better distributed, helping to retain long-term staff. Manitoba's Crown Attorney Association says the province still needs to hire more prosecutors overall. A shortage of nurses in Canada means provincial governments are now trying to recruit domestically. They're also trying to lure nurses from abroad. But some internationally educated nurses already in Canada feel ignored, saying they could be working in their professions with just a bit more help getting their credentials recognized. Karen Pauls explains.
This is the kind of hemodialysis work Nika Reyes planned to do when she moved to Winnipeg from the Philippines in 2015. But that's not how it turned out.
It was a 2 to 3 years process, and it wasn't, I cannot see the end of the tunnel.
Reyes applied to work in Ontario and Manitoba, but she failed the listening portion of her English language assessment by 1 mark. Last fall, that benchmark changed, which meant she would have passed. But by then, it was too late.
Paid so much, wasted so much of my time, my years. Efforts were not being reciprocated or being acknowledged.
Reyes moved to Tennessee, passed her licensure exam, and is working in her chosen field.
I love what I'm doing.
It's hard to know how many internationally trained nurses are in Canada struggling to get accredited, unable to work in their fields, or help with the current healthcare crisis. We do know in Ontario in 2020 alone, 12,000 nurses were in that situation. And here's the thing, while they're waiting, provincial governments are investing in recruiting trips to bring even more of them to Canada.
Saskatchewan was there in December.
The Filipino community is strong and vibrant.
Manitoba has a delegation there this week.
Mga kababayan, come to friendly Manitoba.
Before he left, the minister said he's looking to renegotiate Manitoba's Memorandum of Understanding with the Philippine government.
So that we can ensure the well-being of Manitobans being serviced by these nurses, but also the well-being of those Filipino nurses when they're coming here.
Which brings us back to the question of those internationally trained nurses already here who are waiting.
I feel the weight of that every day.
This is the woman responsible for filling up to 2,000 vacant nursing spots in Manitoba. She's recruiting in the Philippines this week, but hasn't forgotten the IENs back home.
I need them as well, and I want them in the workplace as much as I do the nurses we're recruiting from the Philippines.
Manitoba's health minister says she's working with regulatory bodies to make the accreditation process more efficient.
Oh, to the individuals who've left, I'm saying to them, come home, come back to Manitoba, because there are a lot of opportunities here. And so I say to those individuals who are here in Manitoba, don't leave Manitoba. Things are getting better.
Nika Reyes misses her family and friends in Winnipeg, but she's not coming back.
Canada is a good country, but for the nursing profession, it is not. It's not a friendly country for nurses.
Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Construction on a new recreation complex in northeast Winnipeg will not start for at least another 3 years. But the cost has already gone up from earlier estimates. CBC's Cameron McLean has the latest on the city's efforts to build the East of the Red Recplex.
This area is really expanding. There's been tons of homes built here in the past 10 or 15 years.
Michelle Wetton-Salo has lived her whole life in East Winnipeg. She says it's rare to see new recreation projects in this part of the city.
I continue to see investments by the city on the west side of the city. And also, private facilities are opening up a lot over there as well. But here on the east side, we don't have a ton of options.
That will change in a few years. The East of the Red Recplex will be 92,000 square feet, including a wave pool, water slides, and a running track. A new study estimates it will cost more than $89 million, $7 million more than the last estimate in 2020.
As you can see, the city has already started soil remediation work at the site of the future East of the Red Recplex. This part of the city has seen significant population growth in recent years, with new housing being built, and the city hopes that this new facility serves as a one-stop shop for the recreation needs of these residents.
The Recplex is set to be built next to the Transcona Library. A spokesperson for the city says the current plans call for the decommissioning of the Transcona Kinsman Centennial Pool, although the outdoor Transcona Aquatic Park will remain. Finance Chair Jeff Brawadi says the new Recplex will benefit the whole city.
We really haven't made investments in aquatics in a long, long time. The Elmwood Culloden Pool definitely reaches back about 40 years. The Transcona Pool is small and older. So again, this area is experiencing a lot of growth in recent times, and things like swimming are life safety matters.
The city expects construction to start in 2026. While people like Wetton-Salo have been waiting years for the facility, she says it will be worth it once it's built. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg police are asking for help identifying a suspect in 2 stabbings downtown Saturday night. They both happened Saturday night just after 7. A woman in her 20s was followed by someone off a city bus by a woman she didn't know. Happened at Main and Mayfair. She was stabbed, but the knife or whatever was used didn't go through her clothing. She escaped to safety by jumping on another bus and contacting police. She was not hurt. Then about 15 minutes later, another woman in her 20s was stabbed and robbed on the east side of Main Street. She had to be taken to hospital but was in stable condition. Police believe the suspect is the same in both cases. If you saw anything, they ask that you call them. Hundreds of people from all over Canada gathered near Winnipeg over the weekend as part of the so-called World Unity Convoy. This event was much quieter than the protests in Ottawa and other cities last year. As CBC's Karen Pauls tells us, even though there are a few mandates in place, experts say these types of protests are likely to continue.
Organizers called it Camp Hope. It was set up on a private property not too far from here, and it was billed as a family-friendly event.
Camp Hope is not here to tear the government down. We are not here to block roads. We are not here to go block everything there. We are here to bring people back together to peace, love, and unity.
Still, there was anti-vaccine sentiment in the crowd, the issue that sparked last year's protests.
That's about people what got vaxxed injured. They lost everything. They lost their houses. They lost their job. And they are coming, they're telling their story so that other people can learn from the stories.
There was also a small protest and counter-protest in Ottawa on the weekend. Some upset Commissioner Paul Rouleau ruled the use of the Emergencies Act was justified last year. Experts say while the movement has splintered into different groups, it's not going away.
Some form of this movement is going to be around until the next federal election. I think all the more reason to think so if they double down on the slogan of unity with all of its anti-Trudeau connotations.
People who live and work nearby say there have been a few folks around, but they've been mostly polite and low-key, sticking to that Camp Hope site. RCMP officers say they were in contact with the organizers all weekend, and there were no calls or incidents. Karen Pauls, CBC News, near Dugald, Manitoba.
A 17-year-old from a Northern First Nation is now known as a hero in her community. She helped save several children from a burning apartment complex. The CBC's Joanne Roberts takes us through her journey.
I guess I died at the scene, so they had to do CPR. So, I couldn't breathe on my own.
Shanika Charnaby is still recovering from her injuries after she nearly died helping rescue children from an apartment fire in her community of Tataskoyak Cree Nation. She was in stable but critical condition when she was brought to the nursing station and airlifted to a hospital in Winnipeg.
I remember them putting things up my nose and I was spacing out, hearing a few things.
Charnaby was walking to work when she saw the fire. Even though she has asthma, she didn't hesitate to run into the building.
I went upstairs and I went inside and I grabbed 2 kids and that mom and that kid, but then I went to the road to go wave people down.
Charnaby says that's when a Tataskoyak firefighter arrived, along with other community members who wanted to help. Charnaby and 7 other people went back into the apartment to try and rescue more residents.
I was already out of it. I was in there for who knows how long. And then I got out and I fainted.
One of the children she saved is in stable but critical condition, recovering in a children's hospital in Edmonton.
I didn't have an adrenaline or I wasn't scared.
People are calling her a hero, but Charnaby doesn't see it that way.
I honestly just feel normal. It's just kind of overwhelming with so much people, who know me now.
Charnaby is joining the call from First Nations leadership to increase fire safety and mitigation in northern communities.
They don't have much of that back up in north because small towns and that, not much resort there, I guess.
The National Indigenous Fire Council says it does not recommend untrained people go into burning buildings. It advises families to have a safety plan to exit a building in case of a fire. Charnaby is on the road to recovery back at her home. She says she's considering whether she wants to get training in firefighting after she graduates. Joanne Roberts, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Towns and cities across Manitoba have welcomed thousands of Ukrainian refugees since Russia's invasion of that country began a year ago. In Gimli, new arrivals have not only found new homes and jobs, but also a sense of safety and community. CBC's Riley Lachuk has that story.
16-year-old Veronica Balyan feels like she's now home. The teen settled in Gimli with her father after fleeing Kyiv following Russia's invasion 1 year ago.
I grabbed all my things, all my stuff, and we grabbed a ticket for a train.
After taking trains and planes, staying in churches along the way, they ended up in a Winnipeg hotel with almost none of their belongings. They were then flown to Texas for the prospect of starting a new life in a warmer climate, but moved back after hearing about Gimli.
For me, it was perfect because, I don't like big city.
Balyan and her father are among a growing number of Ukrainians who are calling the Interlake town home. The town's Community Development Corporation opened up 100 rooms at the former Air Force dormitory for Ukrainians moving to Canada, and jobs in the resort community for all of them.
We felt that we could help. So we started bringing in Ukrainians, families.
Melanie Specula says 70 Ukrainians moved into the dorms at first, many of whom have since found new homes and jobs in town, including at her restaurant. She says people are still moving in and believes they're drawn to the slower pace of life.
We're a resort town. We're on a beautiful lake. It's very safe here. I think that appeals to a lot.
Balyan says she has not only found a home in Gimli, but also a welcoming community. She found a job at a local coffee shop and has already made friends with other Ukrainians and locals after starting high school last fall.
It's good. Here in Gimli, I have a lot of friends from my school. I have also friends from Ukraine.
Balyan says she plans to continue her studies in Winnipeg after graduation with the goal of becoming a psychologist. But she plans to move back to Gimli, her new home. Riley Lachuk, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Meteorologist John Sauder joins us back from holidays. Hello.
Hello. It seems like every time I come back, it gets cold again. I'm sorry. It's not on purpose.
It's not on purpose, but it does. We've noticed a trend. We have.
Okay. Well, I'm here to stay for a while. So,
okay. But is the cold going to stay? That's the.
And we were talking about this earlier today. I was in our meeting about how we are expecting the extreme cold warning to kind of drift gently into southern Manitoba. And I think as we were talking about that, it did just that. So here's a look at the warnings first of all. Extreme cold warning in the north. It is hazardous across northern Manitoba. Yes, it has been extended to include, once again, the entire province, all of southern Manitoba. This is where we get frostbite in 10 minutes or less. In the north tonight, it's more like 2 to 5 minutes on exposed skin. The good news is, in the north, it will start to warm up just a little bit overnight. It'll still be very cold tomorrow, though. Right now, we're at minus 21. We got to about minus 17 or just a little bit better than that today in the afternoon in the Winnipeg area, but temperatures are already falling quite quickly and will continue to do so into that minus 27 range by early morning. I think in Winnipeg we've got an easy shot at about minus 30 in the overnight period. What does that mean to your exposed skin, and why do you need to cover your skin? Well, with wind chill values through the evening here, at about minus 28, and you saw on the current conditions, we're already at minus 31. So 30 minutes or so, I think that's now at about a 28-minute freeze time. So still okay to be outside, mainly because the winds aren't all that strong. But winds will pick up tomorrow, and even in the morning with a light breeze at minus 30 or so, an 8-minute freeze time on exposed skin. Projected daytime highs, though, I'm just going to get right into the good news, okay? It does stay cold through the week. ICAST prediction system has us in the minus single digits as we get into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. I will concur, and I'll show you the numbers I've come up with in just a little bit. Not much cloud here anywhere. Satellite completely clear. We do see a little bit of cloud building in late tomorrow as a storm system that's going through North Dakota, Minnesota tonight into tomorrow, and then another one on Wednesday night. We're going to start to see a little bit of cloud from that later in the day that will last through Thursday. The other thing is, on the north side of the system, we have northerly winds that are gusting to about 30 or 40 through into the afternoon and evening, and that will continue on Thursday. So a couple of cloudy days on the way. Not first thing tomorrow, but certainly on into the later part of the day and then through Thursday. Winds, that's the other part of the equation here. As we get into tomorrow morning, they are still fairly light. And then tomorrow afternoon, we start to see some gusts around that 30 to 40 range. And even over into Kenora, we're looking at winds at about 20 to 25 at least through the day. So yes, winds will factor in to kind of make it feel a lot cooler. Minus 30 though tonight, and light winds north at 10. Be like that in the morning, thank goodness. At the bus stop though, minus 29 degrees, and then in the afternoon only minus 23. We start to see the cloud building in and the winds picking up. Very cold in the afternoon, and then in the coming days, cloudy, still windy on Thursday at minus 21, and we're still cold Friday and Saturday. Less wind though, and I'll show you those numbers once again in the 7-day forecast. It looks like Sunday, Janet, will be the better day on the weekend to be outside.
We'll be watching. Thank you so much, John. See you in a little bit. Well, as we just saw in Gimli, immigration plays a vital role in the growth of many Manitoba communities. Much of Steinbach's growth has been fueled by the arrival of Filipinos. They've brought their culture and their food to the region and also their love of basketball. CBC's Ian Fraze explains how Filipino newcomers to Steinbach are giving back through the sport they love.
Maybe the busiest place in town on a Saturday night.
I'm just here to enjoy and hoping for the best.
The championship of Steinbach's only basketball league.
If they're going to beat us on anything, it's the little things. It's the boxing.
This was a basketball league made for Filipinos by Filipinos. But over time, they noticed how many other ballers in the Steinbach area had no competitive place to play. So this past winter, they opened up their league to everyone.
The Filipinos, ever since we moved here, we've been welcomed with open arms by people who are from here locally, and we want to, give back to that. We don't want to be exclusive. We want to be inclusive, right?
Alex Thiessen wanted to play for a while.
I've asked, countless times for from different teams.
He says it's all thanks to the growing number of Filipinos moving to Steinbach. There's 1,500 Filipinos in a city of nearly 18,000 people.
There's almost no chance that there would be men's league at all if it wasn't for that.
So now that the league has opened up to non-Filipinos, Thiessen's wife can cheer on her husband.
As a Filipino, I always wanted to see other other culture as well, other colors to play basketball, and in Southeast they're always big on basketball as well.
Non-Filipino players used to drive into Winnipeg to play in leagues, but now they don't have to. This Steinbach league brings in the crowds.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, they're packing gyms. This is crazy. It's been huge for Steinbach basketball.
Raymond Kelly is playing basketball again because of this league.
I'm going to be playing against a lot of guys that I grew up playing against, and I think it's great for men, that are, once they transition out of high school, to stay active and to stay involved in the community.
Commissioner Abram Razan only sees the sport growing from here. For the first time, they'll have a spring league and a division for women.
You can never have too much basketball.
He's already training for the spring.
Sadly, Filipinos, we could use a little bit of height, so we lost in the quarterfinals. But we'll be joining the spring league again with the same team. We'll be running it back, and hopefully we could get some more wins and go deeper into the playoffs.
For Filipinos and non-Filipinos alike, this league has proven to be a slam dunk. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Steinbach, Manitoba.
Coming up with another earthquake having jolted Turkey yesterday. Here in Winnipeg, Turkish and Syrian communities are raising money to help in any way they can. That story is coming up next. Fundraising efforts in Winnipeg are growing for earthquake victims in Turkey and Syria, and sadly, so is the need. On Monday, another earthquake further devastated parts of both countries. The CBC's Joanne Roberts joins us once again with more.
The South Winnipeg Community Center quickly filled with hundreds of people looking to support the local Syrian community as it sold traditional foods to raise funds for people in Turkey and Syria.
Another 2 earthquakes happened.
Mohammed Koja is a Syrian refugee. The new earthquakes have him even more worried for his family, who are now homeless and living on the street in Syria's Kurdish regions.
All my brothers have children. Everyone he looking for some place, safe place.
Koja and his family cooked traditional desserts to sell at the fundraiser as their way to help, even though they're thousands of kilometers away from their loved ones.
I feel so sorry for them. They need help. They have no food.
Magda is also a Syrian refugee. Her family is in Turkey, living in tents since the earthquake on February 6th. She was overjoyed to see so many people at the fundraiser and says she's thankful Canadians are stepping up to help.
I really appreciate Canadian people. They are very kind, they're very helpful.
I was super happy when I was driving in and I saw the parking lot full of cars. It was just so heartwarming to see.
Zahra Tariq is with the University of Manitoba's Muslim Students Association. She says many student groups at the university came together to organize the fundraiser.
We got the Egyptian Students Association, the Arab Students Association, and Students for Justice in Palestine to collaborate with us.
Tariq says the groups primarily wanted to raise awareness for the ongoing situation in Turkey and Syria, but they also want to send aid. Tariq says the money raised will go directly to individuals in the earthquake zones.
Hoping to help the affected individuals, so that's really important to us too.
Monday's earthquakes brought down dozens of buildings already weakened by earthquakes earlier this month. More than 1 million people have been left homeless and nearly 50,000 deaths have been reported, but officials believe the numbers are much higher. Joanne Roberts, CBC News, Winnipeg.
In an address to the nation today, Vladimir Putin tried to portray Russia as the real victim as forces keep up the fight in Ukraine. He also blamed the West for starting it. Meantime, the U.S. president, who recently visited Kyiv before heading to Poland, says Putin chose this war and only he can end it. Stewart reports.
In Russia, there was wall-to-wall coverage of President Vladimir Putin's speech. It was even beamed down over the few pedestrians passing by this mall in Moscow. He spoke for nearly 2 hours to a crowd of the country's political elite and what appeared to be a few soldiers. Putin again said it was the West waging war, while referring to Russia's invasion only as a special military operation. I want to repeat, it was the West who started this war, he said, and we used and are using force to stop it. There was no talk of what's been happening on the battlefield. Instead, pronouncements about how Russia's economy is weathering, even thriving under the sanctions. Not all are as enthusiastic. There is no reason to believe in the economy, said this man. Where will all these successes come from? We have a lot of opportunities, even though in many places the doors are closed. In his speech, Putin announced that Russia was suspending its participation in New START, its last remaining nuclear treaty with the U.S. Russian officials later said they are still committed to observing the limits around nuclear warheads, and they could resume participating in the treaty again if the U.S. changed its policy. Hours later, when U.S. President Joe Biden spoke to a crowd of thousands in Warsaw, he took aim at Russia's president.
President Putin chose this war. Every day the war continues is his choice. He could end the war with a word.
Biden's speech and the setting presented a triumphant air, a tone much different than the speech in Moscow.
He does not have a clear strategic vision.
This political researcher says Putin's speech was unremarkable because there isn't much to brag about.
I think Putin himself understands that the West will never consent to these demands. So it's more like a demonstration of resolve, so we're not going to stop. One clear message in the speech is that the war is not going to stop.
A large part of Putin's speech focused on domestic initiatives like helping soldiers' families and making life more affordable. It can be seen as a deliberate effort to boost confidence in the president at a time when the war he started now enters its second year. Stewart, CBC News, London.
The UN Human Rights Agency says more than 8,000 civilian deaths have been recorded in Ukraine since Russia invaded last February.
The overwhelming majority of civilian casualties were caused by explosive weapons with wide area effects, including artillery shells, cruise and ballistic missiles, and airstrikes, and most occurred in populated areas.
Even worse, UN officials believe the number of civilians killed in the ongoing war could be thousands more than they've documented. They point to a lack of information or access to what happened in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol, which is now under Russian control. Moscow continues to deny intentionally targeting civilians during what it calls a special military operation. Inflation is cooling in this country. Statistics Canada reports consumer inflation, known as the Consumer Price Index, slowed for the 8th straight month in January. The inflation rate fell to 5.9% last month, down from 6.3% in December, a bigger drop than expected. But still, prices are going up. Grocery prices in particular remain stubbornly high. Food inflation actually increased to 11.4% from just 11% in December. Overall, though, economists call this latest reading good news. They say it reduces pressure on the Bank of Canada to raise interest rates to keep fighting inflation. That, in turn, eases financial pressure on Canadians who have mortgages and other debts. More than 40 people are dead. More than 1,000 have been displaced after massive flooding in southeast Brazil. As you could see, rescue efforts continue as crews search through rubble for survivors after recent torrential rains. More than 600 millimeters, about 2 feet of rain, fell over the weekend alone. Officials say that is unusual. The state of Sao Paulo was the hardest hit. Medical supplies and emergency aid are slowly getting through to some areas. Heavy rains are expected for several more days. Coming up, how students at one Winnipeg high school are trying to make space, a safe space, for Black students who are dealing with racism. What this means for mental health after the break. Emanuela Shaibu is a 16-year-old student at Fort Richmond Collegiate in Winnipeg and a member of the Know Your Roots group. In a school that doesn't have any Black teachers, that group is a safe space for Black students to talk about their experiences. CBC's Namponde Londe sat down with Emanuela to learn how anti-Black racism affects students' daily lives.
Emma, your calligraphy is so nice.
I think no. You think if, but I think you mean they're not gonna work out.
So, what kind of issues have you talked about that arise for Black students with mental health?
I feel like our mental health is not taken very seriously, like especially when it comes to like anti-Black racism and how it affects like Black students' mental health. It's not taken seriously, especially by the other non-Black students. Like when it comes to things like police brutality and racism and microaggressions, they don't really seem to care about things like that and how it affects their Black peers. And I think that's a very big issue and a problem because you find yourself just being bombarded with racism and microaggressions everywhere you go. And it shouldn't have to be like that for Black students.
Like, what do you feel is important for adults to know about what Black youth are going through?
That racism doesn't just go away when you get into school. Like the same views that many old non-Black people have, or like the same racist views that some adults might hold, are the same views that they're teaching to their kids. So racism is not something that you don't see in schools. It's like everywhere, and that Black students' experiences and the experiences of Black youth need to be listened to. Like, especially when it comes to racism, the things that you're experiencing as an adult is probably the same things that they're experiencing when it comes to racism as a youth.
What do you think that schools could do better to support Black students?
Something that I think schools could do better is to, one, acknowledge that it's happening, acknowledge the racism and how it affects Black people in the school, and then try to see what they can do about it, like come up with solutions. Maybe put clearer rules on what you can and can't say in school, or make harsher punishments for people who do use the N-word against Black people or do use slurs against Black people, and also to create a safe space for Black students to know that they are like appreciated and they're loved and that they can come to school and feel like they're safe.
How does anti-Black racism intersect with bullying? Like, how does that become different for Black students?
I feel like it becomes different for Black students because a lot of the bullying is like stereotypes and like prejudice and just full on, racism. Because like when it comes to a non-Black person being bullied, like it's also hurtful language, but when you're a Black person, you can be called the N-word, or you can be called things that like pertain to your identity, and it's kind of hard to get away from that because you exist as a Black person and your skin is never gonna go away, so it's something you're going to have to go through all your life, and those things that they might have said to you in like the 5th grade might carry or stick with you all your life.
Do you feel like there's a stigma in the Black community when it comes to talking about mental health?
I definitely do think there's a stigma when it comes to mental health. I feel like mental health has been kind of revolved around like whiteness and almost like acceptable for white people and not for like Black people, especially like when you come to terms with the fact that like police brutality, some of the people in those situations, the Black people, have been having mental illness, and instead of like taking account of that, they just see them as another Black person who's a threat. And I think that Black people deserve to like be human and deserve to like be not okay, and we need to like take account of that and realize that it's okay for Black people to not be okay.
Shaibu will speak tomorrow night. She's part of a mental health panel at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. That event is being organized by the University of Manitoba's Black Alliance, and it starts at 6 p.m. As we saw last time when meteorologist Sauder joined us, we are in for some cold weather, but The situation in Winnipeg is different from the situation in Churchill. Just how cold is it up north?
You know, right now, Churchill is at minus 35. It's been stuck at that temperature all day today, but the winds are gusting over 40, so it's creating wind chills that are in the minus 50 range. Wow. You know, and that, again, that's not a temperature, but that just means that your skin will freeze. You'll get frostbite in 2 or 3 minutes. I've got a graphic here that shows you the conditions that will actually improve a little bit overnight in the Churchill area, but to say that that's an improvement is a bit of a stretch. So 2 to 3 minute freeze times through the evening hours in the Churchill area and right across northern Manitoba. Just not a good time to be outside unless you got everything covered up. And I guess at those temperatures of minus 35, you probably would have most of your skin covered. It does moderate a little bit in the morning because generally the temperature will drop to minus 38 and then rise to minus 33 or so by morning. It is the coldest air right up in that Hudson Bay area, but still cold here in the south. You look at the upper level pattern, and there is a change on the way, but not until we get to about Sunday. And that's when we're going to start to see that milder push of air from the south. And hopefully it continues to move in that direction. But Sunday will be the start of temperatures in the minus single digits or so. Right now in Winnipeg, we're at minus 21. At the Forks, minus 18, so a little bit warmer downtown, mostly because it was a sunny day and the concrete in the downtown area, the darker color of the city will soak up some of that sunshine as opposed to the white field that is very exposed out at the airport. And you can see the forested regions are a little bit warmer as well. And that's typical in the winter when you have not much wind and you've got lots of sunshine. The darker colors will soak up that sunshine and really give you a much warmer temperature by a few degrees anyway. There are the numbers across the north. Lots of minus 30s, and there's that minus 35 in Churchill, a minus 33 right now in Gillam. Not much cloud around at all. And as we head into the night tonight, we're looking at a couple of minus 30s in northwestern Ontario, namely Red Lake, Kenora, down to minus 28 tonight. Same with Dryden, not much cloud, a little bit more cloud if you head farther east. We're looking at relatively clear skies here across much of the south, a minus 30 in Winnipeg, even colder for Steinbach and Sprague. Pinawa down to minus 32 tonight, and Barons River down to minus 36 degrees tonight. Minus 30s across most of the west, a minus 33 in Swan River. And then as we head to the north, we're looking at temps that look like this. Frostbite in just minutes. In the south, it's more like 10 minutes or less. And then tomorrow's forecast, we're looking at quite an improvement, mid to minus 20s for Churchill, so 10 degrees warmer tomorrow. Low minus 20s in the west and through Thompson, a high of minus 22. But again, lots of sunshine across the north. In the south, we'll see some cloud building. It'll generally build from south to north, but temperatures stay in the minus 20s tomorrow. And with winds picking up later in the day, wind chill factors will be in the extreme range. A high of minus 14 in Fort Frances, minus 18 in Kenora.
Thanks, John.
You.
Up next, Communities in Focus. CBC Manitoba has set up another pop-up newsroom, hoping to hear stories and bring them to you. More on this after the break. You're watching CBC. CBC Manitoba has set up shop in Steinbach. Our pop-up bureau in Clear Springs Centre will be open until March 31st. CBC's Ian Fraze, who's from Grunthal, not far away, will be there to meet people and hear stories from the community. I was also there today, chatting with folks about why they love living in Steinbach. Great things about coming here to Steinbach with our temporary newsroom is you get to meet all kinds of great new friends. This is John and Kieran Mahi. You moved here from Edmonton, yes?
In 1987, yes.
And you've lived in many other places as well.
Yes, I have. Yes, we have.
Yeah, like London, England, for example, where you met.
And
Uganda.
And Ottawa.
And Ottawa.
In Edmonton. Some friends in Edmonton were saying that to Kieran, that if you move to Steinbach, you're going to have to wear long dresses and a kerchief. So that's a very conservative community. But when we got here, we were pleasantly surprised. It's very progressive and a very welcoming community.
And that's something that people don't know about Steinbach. You know, when the going gets tough, yes, that old hard work ethic, that help your neighbor attitude, that does come out. That's still there. That old fashionedness is there. But what's happening, there's a new demographic coming out, and that is because of immigration so strong. And you know, we're just loving our newcomers. They're amazing. They bring vibrancy, energy to our community, and we're just looking so much to partner with them and to grow bigger.
What do you think Winnipeggers don't know about Steinbach that they should know?
The facilities that are here, you know, we have an aquatic center, which is absolutely wonderful.
Tell me about this aquatic center, because everybody keeps mentioning this aquatic center and how Steinbach won out because Winnipeg has nothing like it. What's so special about this place?
Well, you know what? The aquatic center is, well, I don't know, it's cool. We got slides and lazy river and the Olympic swimming pool.
Everything we want is here, the shopping and the recreation and the community, the friends.
What would you like to see in the future for Steinbach?
I'd like to see the entertainment center finished and the new arena that they're building.
It is huge. It is the biggest project that our city has ever undertaken. 100,000 square foot facility. The primary part of it will be a 2,440 seat spectator rink. They're pounding the piers in right now. Like we got everything going for January. There will be a community space, which will be a gym, basketball, volleyball, tennis, badminton.
Can you imagine living anyplace else?
Nope. This is home.
Your 7-day forecast and daily lift still to come. Stay with us.
Even teenagers will be buttoning up their coats over the next few days, but there is good news. Still a little cool on Saturday, high -18, but check out Sunday. -7, few flurries, -6 on Monday, and it does look like the cold snap is just going to be this week, and then things get a lot better as we head on into next week. Festival de Voyageur is in full swing now, and organizers and performers say it has been great to see people out again this past weekend, apparently very busy.
Yeah, Festival, of course, a celebration of Métis culture. Métis fiddler Michael Odette says he's playing Festival with the fiddle. He started with his grandfather, and that's tonight's Daily Lift.
My name is Michael Odette. The Festival is a huge part of my life, and a lot of fiddle players and a lot of people who come here to experience the culture and the music, the French-Canadian, the Métis music.
I started to play for them for the festival in '72, something like that. We started at St. Boniface Hotel. It was hard to get a good fiddle. And I said to Michael, today's your birthday. I'm going to give you my fiddle.
Fiddle is it's basically the heart of our culture. It's like family, and all the musicians we all play music with each other. All the Métis culture and the music and the kind of music that we play here, it has a lot to do with culture, family, and just our whole love for music.
How beautiful to be playing there on your grandfather's fiddle. You know?
Yeah, and here's one thing I can absolutely guarantee you. The snow sculptures at Festival this year, they're not going to melt.
There you go.
Well, they will, but well after
later.
the festival is over.
Thanks for being with us. See you tomorrow.
See you.